Good afternoon, I'm Anthony Lugg with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Up first this afternoon, new COVID containment measures will be outlined in Parliament later today, with the measures announced on April 13 expiring earlier this morning. The new measures will be announced by Prime Minister Andrew Holness in Parliament this afternoon. It comes just days after the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa-McKenzie, called for strict measures to be maintained to help prevent a third surge in COVID cases locally. Now, Dr. Bisesa-McKenzie's warning was based on the revelation that the fast-spreading UK variant of the COVID disease is present in Jamaica. That, as 7 of the 10 positive COVID-19 samples tested at the Trinidad-based CARFA were shown to have the UK variant of the virus. The other 3 had a variant which is now being investigated. And Prime Minister Andrew Holness is expected to add Trinidad and Tobago to the travel restriction list. Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley made the announcement during a news conference yesterday. Now, Dr. Rowley said Mr. Holness contacted him on Sunday, indicating that the ban on flights was due to the increase in cases of COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago, including the Brazilian variant. In the latest bulletin, Trinidad's health ministry said 5 more people had died from the virus. The total number of deaths from the virus is 179. There are 2,559 active cases. Yesterday, the Trinidad and Tobago government announced further restrictions to deal with the spread of COVID-19 as the authorities warned that the health system could collapse within 10 days due to the spike in cases. The opposition People's National Party is raising concerns about the government's move to ease travel restrictions on the United Kingdom. It comes as the country is placed on high alert for a potential deadly third wave of COVID-19. More in this report.
Amid the spread of the UK variant of COVID-19 in Jamaica, the government decided to allow travelers from the United Kingdom to enter the island from May 1. The opposition is raising several concerns about the move taken by the government.
We want to ensure that at the same time that we are balancing the livelihoods, that we do not endanger the country in going through a situation where a potentially greater third wave will cause greater devastation in terms of our lives, in terms of the deaths, and in terms of the economy.
Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tofton has indicated that 50 samples were sent to the Caribbean Public Health Agency CARFA for testing to determine the variant strain. Only 10 of the samples were deemed suitable for the procedure. 7 returned positive for the British variant.
We might be grasping in the dark and not knowing what is happening. We might be given a vaccine that might not be efficacious against that particular strain. And it is for those reasons why we have repeatedly asked the government to ensure that genomic sequencing is done, something that is done for all viral infections, really.
Given the decline in the positivity rate for COVID-19, Dr. Guy is urging the government to implement strict enforcement measures to prevent a possible third wave.
The proper protocols are to be put in place to ensure that we do not have the possibility, as has been expressed, of having the third wave in this country.
Kodian Barrett, TVJ News.
The island's COVID-19 positivity rate has reached the lowest point since February of 8.5%. This as 48 cases of the respiratory illness were recorded on Monday from 544 tests. This pushes the total confirmed cases to 46,087. In the meantime, 3 deaths were recorded, bringing the death toll to 793. One of the deaths was previously under investigation. Meanwhile, 218 persons remain in hospital. 26 are critically ill. There are currently 23,307 active cases. Almost $2 million. That's how much persons who breached the Disaster Risk Management Act in St. Anne will have to pay before returning to court. O'Shane Masters has that story.
Flout the laws, you pay the fine. The message that is being sent to several people who were caught at an illegal party at a great house in Wilberforce, Brownstown, St. Anne. Head of Operations for the St. Anne Police, Deputy Superintendent Kevin Francis, revealed that around 11 o'clock on Sunday, March 14, the security forces went to the area to search for a man wanted for a murder committed in February. However, they found an illegal party in full swing. The persons were arrested and charged. When they appeared before Senior Parish Judge Vaughan Facey in the Brownstown Parish Court on Monday, they pleaded guilty to the charges. They were fined $80,000 or 3 months in prison each for the offense. However, the accused persons told the judge that they were unable to pay the money all at once. After consideration, the judge granted them 3 months each to pay the fine. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Travel agents in Guyana are upset that 2 years after Fly Jamaica pulled out of the market and filed for bankruptcy, it is yet to refund its customers. The travel agents complain that although millions are owed in refunds, Fly Jamaica has not been able to honor repeated promises to process the refunds. Kimon Witter has the details.
The agents raised the matter yesterday at a meeting called by Guyana's Minister of Public Works, Juan Edgehill, following numerous complaints, including their failure to refund passengers. The discussion quickly evolved into one that saw the travel agents lodging complaints with the Minister and the Director General of the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, GCAA, Egbert Field, about the failure of airlines to process cash refunds. The travel agents sought the government's intervention to help against the daily abuses from customers who remain affected. It was revealed that a travel agency, Frandec, owes passengers more than $1 million in refunds directly linked to Fly Jamaica. In some cases, the agency rebooked passengers in anticipation of a promised refund that never came. One of the travel agents asked the Public Works Minister to commit the government's urgent attention to the issue and, if possible, to utilize bonds to fast-track the refunds. The GCAA Director General said he has written to the authorities in Jamaica and outlined the matter. Mr. Field said he was told that Fly Jamaica is in receivership and there are several individuals still awaiting payment.
It's time for a break. But stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back. Continuing the news. The Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, wants an island-wide halt of removal of coastal mangroves as environmentalists raise concern about the clearing of wetlands in Hanover for a hotel development. In recent days, there has been outrage over the activity after a video of the area was circulated online. Chairman of JET, Diana Macaulay, says the destruction of mangroves is an old approach to coastal development and inappropriate given the climate crisis.
I personally think, given the situation with the climate crisis and how much mangroves we've already lost, there should be very little more that we agree to lose. Certainly not in large areas. There might be some places around the coast where the mangrove stands, our remnants, are not really functioning as ecosystems that perhaps you could look at. But where you have a big, large, functioning wetland, we should not lose the function.
Mrs. Macaulay explains that mangroves provide protection against storms, and without them, even the beaches where the hotels are being built will become eroded. She wants hotels to be constructed further from the coastline.
Particular site, perhaps you could have put a much smaller hotel further back. Everyone goes on like this is heresy, but it's been done in other countries. In other countries, the hotels are set far back from the beach, and those people are going to have their tourism infrastructure as the sea levels rise and as the storms hit. We who insist on having our front step in the sea are not.
Coastal erosion is wreaking havoc for business operators along the coastline in Buff Bay, Portland. But even as work is currently being done to halt erosion, one business operator is desperate for quick action to be taken as his establishment is on the verge of collapse. Sandy Williams reports.
B&A Hardware is one of several businesses along the coastline in Buff Bay, Portland, in serious danger as a result of the disappearing shoreline. The sea has eaten away the seawall that is to provide protection against coastal erosion, and now the soil under the foundation of the business is eroding. Manager of the hardware, Arthur Toby, says the erosion creates holes in the yard of the establishment, and each time he fills them, shortly after a new one is created.
I will get a backhoe, dig it out, and fill it with boulders, and I have to buy them. I have to employ trucks to carry them here to fill it up. This start to go on again. Tell you the truth, I have no money to employ a backhoe at this time to fill it up. I have to use my truck and over the other side here to carry boulders, buy them, carry them to fill it up as well. This is a very hard thing for me.
The erosion has left Mr. Toby fearful. He says if the situation continues, lives could be lost as well as his business.
I am really afraid. Tell you the truth, I'm really afraid. Because seeing that we are having some holes inside the yard now, if we are going to have hurricane or high tide, I don't know what will happen. I don't know what will happen. Because it's not as heavy as an hurricane one, but seeing that it's doing something like that, it will constantly dig the underneath of this place here. I have 18 persons work with me.
He is appealing to the government and the municipal corporation to take urgent action to rectify the problem.
I am asking the authority if they could do something at the back of the wall here for me, because sooner or later I won't be able to have an hardware here.
The government has committed more than $40 million to construct a seawall along the coastline of Buff Bay in an attempt to halt erosion along that corridor. The project started 3 months ago and is expected to be completed in another 3 weeks.
From I came here, everybody said it's a really trouble spot, and it really was troubling for true. Because meanwhile, all we work, we have a lot of problem with the sea, the tide, the high tide. But eventually we get through with what we're doing now still.
Meanwhile, funding is being sought from Cabinet to commence the restoration of the coastline in Onoto Bay to the tune of just over $179 million. Work to preserve the coastline in Orange Way, which has experienced a wide-scale erosion resulting in the collapse of several buildings along that beach, is to be presented for approval. Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
The police have confirmed that fishermen in Westmoreland have located and killed a shark they believe attacked and bit off a portion of a man's hand on Saturday. The fisherman has been identified as 50-year-old Fitzroy Haywood of Darling Street in Westmoreland. In a video that's too graphic to show here, the shark's abdomen was cut open yesterday and parts of the fisherman's hand was discovered inside. Fishermen who were at sea when their colleague's hand was bitten off said they used their spear gun to shoot the shark after the unfortunate incident. Science officer at the Montego Bay Marine Park, Christopher May, says spear fishermen can help to limit shark attacks by not keeping their catch on their person. He says the sharks are actually attracted by the catch.
We have noticed as a fishing community that to cut costs, it is easier for the fisherman to go out in the water by himself with his line and spear and keep the fish for him, right? And usually this is what leads to the provocation of an attack. Not necessarily the shark going towards the person themselves, but going towards the catch. And it could be a reflex on some fishes to hold their catch close to their chest.
To news overseas now, more than 40% of adults in the U.S. are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. That's the latest data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. But what about children? The details from the CNN.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. This is just trying to beat the virus, try to get everything back to normal.
For Ben Dropic, that meant taking part in a Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine trial for kids 12 to 15 years old. And now, a federal government official tells CNN the Food and Drug Administration is ready to extend its emergency use authorization for that vaccine by early next week. Moderna's president says that company is aiming to have its vaccine authorized for kids 12 and up by this summer. And Novavax has just expanded its phase 3 trial for the same age group. For younger kids, Pfizer and Moderna are both testing on children as young as 6 months and expect to ask the FDA for emergency use authorization for those ages later this year.
I try my best.
Teeing up President Joe Biden's suggestion that kids should be back in the classroom by this fall. Getting there won't be easy.
It's going to take a truly coordinated effort to achieve both the rollout of COVID-19 vaccine in adolescents and a rapid catch-up of routine vaccinations.
But health experts say it's crucial.
If we don't immunize that group, that's going to leave a big part of the population that's susceptible to the virus and be able to continue on the pandemic.
If we keep vaccinating Americans, I think by July 1st, you're going to see much of America feel close to normal.
And for the latest in the financial world, we now go to Cody and Barrett with the Business Minute.
MPC Caribbean Clean Energy has advised that its interim financial statements for the period which ended December 31, 2020 will be filed on May 7. The results were to be filed on May 1. MPC cited unforeseen reasons for the delay. Pan Jam has appointed Joanna Banks as its new CEO. Banks, who joined the company in 2016 as its Vice President of New Business Development Strategy, later became its Senior Vice President in 2018. She takes up the new post on July 1. The University of the West Indies Mona campus has reported a net loss of $1.53 billion during the academic year 2019-2020. That's $115 million less than the previous year. In its audited financial statement, it cited funding challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in a decline in enrollment and operations at the university. The UWI is looking at the rollout of vaccines to boost revenues and increase student enrollment for the upcoming academic year. Supreme Ventures saw a 2% increase in its payout last year as people spent more on gaming throughout the pandemic. The company says payouts reached $52 billion in 2020. At the same time, gross ticket sales reached more than $76 billion. And coming up in the Business Day this evening, how listed company Margaritaville managed to stay afloat amid the tourism fallout and its plans to rebound. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
To some news in sports now. Jamaican and Caribbean #1 squash player Chris Binney slipped one place to 81st in the world in the May edition of the World Squash Federation men's rankings. The 32-year-old, who hasn't competed since March last year, is 10th in the Americas region. Binney, a 9-time Caribbean and national champion, last competed in the 2020 Atlanta Open, which he won. His highest position was in January 2018, when he ranked 65th. Binney recently received an R.J.R. Gleaner Sports Foundation Award for his contribution to sports in 2020. And defending World 2020 champions West Indies have slipped 2 places in the latest ICC T20 ranking. The Caribbean side has fallen to 10th, below Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, who they defeated 2-1 in their most recent spike series in the Caribbean. West Indies experienced a negative move despite losing just one of their last 4 T20 series. Meanwhile, England consolidated their lead in T20 internationals, still ahead of India by 5 points, on the back of an impressive performance in the last year. During that period, they drew a 3-match series against Pakistan 1-1, defeated Australia 2-1 and South Africa 3-0, before losing an away series 3-2 against India. Both Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have gained a place each to be at 8th and 9th in the table respectively, while Australia slipped from 3rd place to 5th. In one-day internationals, West Indies moved up 1 place following their 3-0 series win over Sri Lanka in Antigua in March. West Indies are now 8th in the world with 82 ratings points, 3 ahead of 9th place Sri Lanka and 8 behind Bangladesh in 7th. New Zealand have overtaken world champions England to become the #1 side in ODIs, advancing by 2 slots during the annual update. Australia, India, England, and South Africa close out the top 5. And that's the midday news. I'm Anthony Lugg. Join us at 7 for primetime news. On behalf of the news, sports, and production teams, good afternoon.